Have you ever wondered why some people seem to sabotage themselves just when they're about to break through? Why they make the same destructive choices over and over again, as if something invisible is pulling them back into old patterns? What if I told you that over 700 years ago, a man who had lost everything, who found himself in what he called a dark wood, discovered the three forces that keep us trapped in cycles of failure and mediocrity? Dante Alighieri didn't just write poetry, he mapped the human soul, and in his Divine Comedy, he revealed three beasts that block every person's path to greatness, three ancient enemies that are still hunting you today. The leopard of lust that makes you chase instant gratification over long-term fulfillment, the lion of pride that convinces you that you're above the very work that would set you free, and the she-wolf of greed that whispers that you never have enough, that you need more, always more, until you lose sight of what truly matters. These aren't metaphors. They're psychological realities that Dante understood centuries before modern psychology existed, and if you don't learn to recognize them, they will devour every dream you've ever had. Right now, as you're watching this, one of these beasts is probably circling you, waiting for the moment when your guard is down. Maybe it's the leopard whispering that you deserve that distraction, that pleasure, that immediate reward, instead of doing the hard work. Maybe it's the lion telling you that you're too good for the basics, that you don't need to start from the bottom like everyone else. Or maybe it's the she-wolf convincing you that you need just one more thing, one more purchase, one more achievement, one more person's approval before you can finally be happy. But here's what Dante discovered in his journey through hell. These beasts feed on unconsciousness. They thrive when you don't recognize their influence, and they become powerless the moment you shine light on their tactics. Dante's journey began in what he called the midway point of life, lost in a dark wood where every path seemed blocked. He was 35, the same age when many people today have their first real spiritual crisis, when they realize that everything they've been chasing hasn't brought them the fulfillment they expected. And it was there, in that place of confusion and despair, that he encountered the three beasts that had been stalking him his entire life. The leopard appeared first, beautiful and seductive, representing the sins of incontinence, the inability to control our desires for immediate pleasure. Then came the lion, fierce and proud, representing the sins of violence and pride, the belief that we're above the natural order of growth and learning. Finally, the she-wolf, lean and hungry, representing the sins of fraud and greed, the insatiable appetite that can never be satisfied. But Dante didn't just identify these beasts. He understood that they work together, that they're not separate problems, but different faces of the same fundamental issue, the ego's desperate attempt to avoid the discomfort of real growth. The leopard promises comfort now in exchange for progress later. The lion promises superiority in exchange for humility. The she-wolf promises security in exchange for contentment. And together, they create a perfect trap, a cycle where you're either indulging, inflating, or acquiring, but never actually evolving. Think about your own life for a moment. How many times have you been on the verge of a breakthrough, only to be derailed by one of these forces? How many diets have you started only to give in to the leopard's promise of just this once? How many times have you avoided learning something new because the lion convinced you that you shouldn't have to struggle like a beginner? How many opportunities have you missed because the she-wolf had you chasing something else? something that seemed more important, more urgent, more necessary. The tragedy is that most people spend their entire lives being hunted by these beasts without ever realizing it. They think their problems are external, that they need different circumstances, different people, different opportunities. But Dante understood that the battle is internal, that the beasts live inside us, and that no external change will save us until we face them directly. This is why people can win the lottery and still be miserable, why they can achieve their dream job and still feel empty, why they can find their soulmate and still feel incomplete. The beasts adapt, they evolve, they find new ways to keep us trapped in the same old patterns. But here's the crucial insight that most people miss. These beasts aren't evil, they're misdirected survival instincts. The leopard represents our need for pleasure and comfort, which in healthy doses helps us enjoy life and recover from stress. The lion represents our need for strength and confidence, which in proper measure gives us the courage to face challenges. The she-wolf represents our need for security and resources, which when balanced helps us plan for the future and take care of ourselves and others. The problem isn't that we have these drives. The problem is that they've become our masters instead of our servants. Dante's genius was in understanding that you can't simply kill these beasts. You have to transform your relationship with them. You have to descend into hell, not to stay there, but to understand the mechanics of your own destruction. You have to face the leopard and learn the difference between pleasure that serves your growth and pleasure that stunts it. You have to confront the lion and distinguish between healthy confidence and toxic pride. You have to encounter the she-wolf and separate genuine security from neurotic hoarding. The leopard appears whenever you're about to do something difficult, something that requires sustained effort and delayed gratification. It's the voice that says, "Why don't you check your phone? Instead of writing that chapter, why don't you watch one more episode instead of going to the gym? Why don't you have that drink instead of facing that uncomfortable conversation?" The leopard is cunning because it doesn't argue with your goals. It just suggests that you postpone them. It's the master of just this once, just for today, just until you feel better. And before you know it, just this once becomes just this month, becomes just this year, becomes just this life. The leopard's power lies in its ability to make immediate pleasure seem more real than future consequences. It hijacks your brain's reward system, flooding you with anticipation for short-term hits of dopamine, while making long-term satisfaction seem abstract and distant. This is why people can know exactly what they need to do to improve their lives, and still not do it. It's not a lack of information. It's the leopard's influence, making the comfort zone feel more compelling than the growth zone. But the leopard has a weakness. It can't handle conscious observation. The moment you pause and really look at what it's offering, the spell begins to break. When you ask yourself, will this pleasure serve my long-term growth or just provide temporary escape, the leopard loses its power. When you recognize the pattern, when you see how it always appears at the same moments, offering the same promises, delivering the same disappointment, you begin to reclaim your sovereignty. Dante learned that the leopard feeds on unconscious momentum, on the automatic pilot that lets us slide into familiar patterns without thinking. But consciousness is its kryptonite. The more aware you become of its tactics, the less influence it has over your choices. This doesn't mean you stop enjoying pleasure. It means you become selective about which pleasures align with your highest good. The second beast Dante encountered was the lion, and if the leopard is seductive, the lion is intimidating. It doesn't whisper like the leopard, it roars. It doesn't seduce you away from growth, it convinces you that you're above it. The lion is pride in its most destructive form. The voice that says, you shouldn't have to start at the bottom, you shouldn't have to ask for help, you shouldn't have to admit that you don't know something. The lion appears whenever you're faced with the humbling reality of being a beginner, of making mistakes, of looking foolish while you learn. It's the voice that makes you quit the guitar after a week because your fingers are sore and you don't sound like your heroes yet. It's the force that makes you avoid networking events because you feel like you should already be further along. It's the pride that makes you argue with your mentor, your coach, your teacher, anyone who suggests there's something you could improve. But here's the insidious thing about the lion. It often masquerades as high standards or self-respect. It tells you that you're maintaining your dignity by not subjecting yourself to the indignity of learning, of failing, of being corrected. It convinces you that real strength means never showing weakness, never admitting ignorance, never asking for guidance, and so you remain stuck, not because you lack ability, but because your pride won't let you access the very experiences that would develop that ability. The lion's greatest lie is that competence comes before confidence, that you need to already be good at something before you can allow yourself to practice it. This backwards thinking keeps millions of people trapped in mediocrity, afraid to risk their self-image by attempting something they might not immediately excel at. The lion would rather you stay small and feel superior than grow large and temporarily feel foolish. Dante understood that the lion represents a fundamental misunderstanding of strength. Real strength isn't the absence of vulnerability. It's the courage to be vulnerable in service of growth. Real confidence isn't never being wrong. It's being willing to be wrong in order to eventually be right. Real dignity isn't avoiding all embarrassment. It's maintaining your self-worth while embracing the embarrassment that comes with learning. The lion's weakness is humility, not the false humility that diminishes your worth, but the true humility that recognizes growth as a lifelong process. When you can say, I don't know, without feeling shame. When you can ask for help without feeling weak. When you can make mistakes without feeling worthless. The lion loses its grip on you. It can't survive in an environment of genuine self-acceptance and growth mindset. But defeating the lion requires more than just intellectual understanding. It requires practice. You have to deliberately put yourself in situations where you'll be a beginner, where you'll make mistakes, where you'll need guidance. You have to prove to yourself repeatedly that your worth isn't dependent on your performance, that your identity can remain intact even when your ego takes a hit. The third beast, the she-wolf, is perhaps the most dangerous because it's the most adaptive. Where the leopard offers pleasure and the lion offers superiority, the she-wolf offers security through accumulation. It's the voice that says you need more money before you can feel safe, more achievements before you can feel worthy, more possessions before you can feel complete, more approval before you can feel loved. The she-wolf is never satisfied because its hunger isn't really about the things it craves. It's about the underlying fear of not being enough, of not having enough, of not being worthy of love and security. So no amount of external acquisition can ever fill the internal void, and the she-wolf just keeps growing hungrier demanding more and more until it devours everything that actually matters in your life. This beast appears whenever you're making progress, whenever you're starting to feel content or grateful for what you have. It whispers that contentment is complacency, that gratitude is settling for less, that you need to keep pushing, keep acquiring, keep achieving, or you'll fall behind, be forgotten, lose what you have. The she-wolf turns your strengths into weapons against yourself. Your ambition becomes anxiety. Your drive becomes desperation. Your goals become gods that demand constant sacrifice. The she-wolf is particularly dangerous in our modern world because it's culturally reinforced. Society tells us that more is always better, that growth means accumulation, that success is measured by what you have rather than who you are. The she-wolf feeds on comparison, on social media highlights, on advertising that promises fulfillment through consumption, on career cultures that equate your worth with your productivity. But the she-wolf's hunger reveals something profound about human nature. We're not actually designed to be satisfied by external things. We're meaning-seeking creatures, not pleasure-seeking creatures. We're designed to grow, to contribute, to connect, to create, not just to accumulate. The she-wolf's insatiable appetite is actually a misdirected spiritual hunger, a soul trying to fill itself with things that can never satisfy it. Dante understood that the she-wolf represents the corruption of legitimate needs, the distortion of our natural desire for security and abundance into neurotic hoarding and endless striving. In healthy form, this energy helps us plan for the future, build resources, and create stability. In distorted form, it becomes a black hole that consumes everything we feed it and still demands more. The she-wolf's weakness is contentment, but not passive contentment that stops growing. Active contentment that appreciates what is while working toward what could be. It's the ability to want without needing, to strive without suffering, to achieve without attachment to outcomes. This kind of contentment doesn't come naturally in our culture. It has to be cultivated deliberately through practices like gratitude, meditation, and conscious consumption. But perhaps the most important thing Dante learned about these three beasts is that they don't work alone. They work together in a sophisticated system designed to keep you trapped, no matter which direction you try to move. When you resist the leopard's call to immediate pleasure, the lion steps in and tells you that you're above such base desires, inflating your ego and setting you up for a bigger fall. When you humble the lion and embrace beginner's mind, the she-wolf appears and convinces you that you need to acquire more skills, more knowledge, more credentials before you're ready to actually begin. The beasts have learned to use your virtues against you. Your discipline becomes rigidity, your confidence becomes arrogance, your ambition becomes greed. They create a psychological prison where every attempt to escape just leads to a different kind of trap, where every strength becomes a weakness, where every solution creates new problems. This is why most self-improvement fails, because it focuses on symptoms rather than the system, on behaviors rather than the beasts that drive those behaviors. You can change your diet without addressing the leopard, and you'll just find new ways to avoid discomfort. You can work on your confidence without confronting the lion, and you'll just develop a more sophisticated form of pride. You can set financial goals without facing the she-wolf, and you'll just transfer your anxiety to new metrics of success. Dante's solution wasn't to fight the beasts directly, because that just feeds them with attention and energy. Instead, he learned to see through them, to recognize their influence without being controlled by it, to transform his relationship with the very forces that had been destroying him. He discovered that the same energy that manifests as destructive when unconscious becomes creative when conscious, that the same drives that trap us when misdirected can liberate us when properly channeled. The leopard's appetite for pleasure can become appreciation for beauty. Its desire for comfort can become compassion for suffering. Its need for immediate satisfaction can become presence in the moment. The lion's pride can become healthy self-respect. Its desire for superiority can become excellence in character. Its need for dominance can become leadership in service. The she-wolf's hunger for security can become generosity from abundance. Its drive for acquisition can become cultivation of wisdom. Its fear of scarcity can become gratitude for what is. But this transformation doesn't happen automatically. It requires what Dante called a journey through hell, a willingness to descend into the darkness of your own psyche and face these beasts in their natural habitat. It means looking honestly at how they've shaped your life, how they've influenced your choices, how they've kept you from becoming who you really are. It means feeling the full weight of the years you've lost to their influence, the opportunities you've missed, the relationships you've damaged, the dreams you've abandoned. This descent is painful, but it's also liberating, because once you see the beasts clearly, once you understand their tactics and recognize their voice, they lose their power over you. They become like bad actors in a play you've seen too many times, transparent in their methods, predictable in their appeals, powerless to fool you anymore. The journey through hell that Dante describes isn't a punishment. It's a purification, a process of separating what's truly you from what's been conditioned into you, what serves your growth from what stunts it, what deserves your energy from what wastes it. It's about learning to say no to the beasts, not from a place of repression or denial, but from a place of clarity and choice. And here's what happens when you complete this journey. When you faced all three beasts and transformed your relationship with them, you discover that they were never your enemies. They were your teachers. The leopard taught you about the power of desire and the importance of choosing your pleasures consciously. The lion taught you about the nature of strength and the courage required for true humility. The she-wolf taught you about the difference between having and being, between security and freedom. Most people spend their lives being controlled by these forces without ever recognizing them, bouncing between the leopard's seductions, the lion's provocations, and the she-wolf's demands like a pinball in a machine, designed to keep them in constant motion, but never let them actually get anywhere. They mistake the movement for progress, the stimulation for satisfaction, the drama for meaning. But once you've made the journey Dante described, once you've descended into your own hell and emerged on the other side, you operate from a completely different paradigm. You're no longer reactive, you're responsive. You're no longer driven by unconscious forces, you're guided by conscious choice. You're no longer trapped in patterns of self-sabotage. You're free to create patterns of self-actualization. This doesn't mean you become perfect. It means you become conscious. You still feel the pull of immediate pleasure, but you can choose whether to follow it. You still experience pride, but you can decide whether to be controlled by it. You still want security and abundance, But you can distinguish between healthy ambition and neurotic desperation. The transformation is subtle but profound. Instead of asking, "How can I get what I want?" you start asking, "What do I really want?" Instead of, "How can I avoid discomfort?" you ask what discomfort is trying to teach me. Instead of, "How can I get more?" you ask, "What is enough?" These shifts in questioning lead to completely different answers, different choices, different outcomes. People will notice the change in you, even if they can't articulate what's different. There's a quality of presence, of groundedness, of internal authority that comes from having faced your own beasts and survived. You're no longer desperately seeking approval, compulsively avoiding pain, or frantically chasing the next thing. You've found what Dante called the straight path, the way that leads not just to external success, but to internal integration. But here's the warning Dante would give you. This journey can't be rushed. Shortcuts only lead back to the dark wood. Attempts to skip steps only feed the beasts. The leopard will offer you quick fixes and instant transformations. The lion will tell you that you're above the slow work of inner development. The she-wolf will convince you that you need more information, more techniques, more systems before you can begin. The path Dante mapped out requires patience, courage, and most importantly, the willingness to be uncomfortable while you grow. It means facing your own capacity for self-deception, your own resistance to change, your own attachment to the very patterns that have been limiting you. It means accepting that growth is messy, non-linear, and often invisible to others. But for those who are willing to make this journey, who are ready to face their own beasts and reclaim their sovereignty, the rewards are immeasurable. You don't just achieve your goals, you become the kind of person who naturally creates what they want. You don't just solve your problems, you develop the wisdom to prevent them. You don't just escape your limitations, you transform them into strengths. Dante ended his divine comedy not in hell, not even in purgatory, but in paradise, in a state of unity with the force that moves the sun and other stars. This isn't mystical poetry, it's practical psychology. It's what happens when you align your individual will with the larger patterns of growth and evolution. When you stop fighting against life and start flowing with it, when you transform your beasts into allies and your struggles into strengths. So I ask you now, which beast is hunting you? Which voice is loudest in your head right now? The leopard promising that you can start tomorrow, next week, next year? The lion insisting that you're above the basic work that everyone else has to do? The she-wolf whispering that you need just one more thing before you can finally be happy? The first step in Dante's journey is recognition, seeing the beasts for what they are, understanding how they've shaped your life, acknowledging the ways they've kept you from your own potential. The second step is decision, choosing to no longer be their victim, no longer be controlled by unconscious forces, no longer settle for a life that's less than what you're capable of. The third step is action, beginning the descent into your own underworld, facing the uncomfortable truths about yourself, doing the work even when you don't feel like it, choosing growth over comfort, truth over convenience, evolution over stagnation. This is not easy work, but it's the most important work you'll ever do, because everything else in your life depends on it. Your relationships, your career, your health, your happiness, all of it is shaped by your relationship with these three fundamental forces. Master them, and you master your life. Remain unconscious of them, and they'll master you. Dante's journey from the dark wood to paradise is available to anyone willing to make it, but it requires everything you have, every ounce of courage, every moment of honesty, every commitment to growth. The beasts are powerful, but consciousness is more powerful. The patterns are strong, but choice is stronger. The past is fixed, but the future is fluid. The question isn't whether you have beasts. Everyone does. The question is whether you'll spend your life being hunted by them, or transform them into the very forces that propel you toward your highest potential. The choice, as always, is yours. But choose quickly, because every day you wait is another day the beasts grow stronger, another day the path grows darker, another day your true life waits for you to finally begin living it. If this resonates with you, if you recognize these beasts in your own life, if you're ready to stop being their victim and start being their masters, then you're ready for the journey. Dante mapped out 700 years ago the journey from hell to paradise, from unconsciousness to awakening, from limitation to liberation. The path is there. It's always been there, waiting for you to take the first step into your own transformation.